Welcome to another episode of AI Product Leader, where every week we shine a light on what it really takes to join the AI world. We have the real conversations with founders, product leaders, AI experts, technologists, and everything in between to understand where the world of AI is right now and what that path looks like, whether you're building AI products or a career in AI. Have questions or on any topic related to AI? Email us and join the conversation at support@aicareerboost.com. Let's dive into the world of AI together. I'm your host, Polly Allen, and I'm the founder of AI Career Boost, where I spend my time helping product managers navigate the world of AI and transition into AI leadership roles. I've spent my career on both the product and software side of the fence, development worlds, and I'm an Alexa AI principal product manager, where I successfully launched the first generative AI answers on Amazon's Alexa back in 2020. I'm also fortunate enough to have been recognized as one of the top 100 women of the future in 2023. Today, we have the pleasure of hosting Hans Villamil, a dynamic and innovative product manager whose impressive career spans some of the most influential companies in tech. Hans's background as a data scientist for Getty Images has led to a passion for creating data-driven products that unlock new revenue streams and drive business impact. This has been a constant throughout his career. Hans has held pivotal roles at tech giants like Amazon, Silicon Valley Bank, and Google, where he led the product vision, strategy, and roadmap for the commercialization of Google Workspace for Education, impacting over 200,000 schools worldwide. His expertise in data-driven and data-intensive applications and AI ML has recently led him to a new role as the Senior AI ML PM at Walmart Data Ventures. How's it going today, Hans? Glad to have you. How are things?
Great. I feel very honored to hear my resume spoken to me in such a way. I don't realize how much time has passed or what I've done in the process. That's pretty
Right?
exciting.
Nice to look back at it all, right? It's amazing. Excellent. So we want to know a little bit more about you, beyond just what I named in your resume. Before AI was really front and center in your world and like part of your title, can you give us a little bit more about your background?
Sure. I started actually my career in sales. I was part of a startup called PEX. I was employee number 7, and it was
Awesome.
a lot of inbound leads and following up on people applying for an account. And then I also did some outbound calls. And really from there, I moved towards trying to get into more of the data side, data science, analytics, really
Yeah.
because I was very excited around strategy and thinking strategically about how to grow the product and how to grow a business. And just being in a startup environment, it allowed me to take on a lot of side projects to identify new opportunities. And so I just kept doing that throughout my career, just going through a lot of my interests, continuing with the data science, then did my MBA at NYU Stern, and then that led to
Nice.
all the other opportunities.
Did you have formal training in data science, like a degree in that space, or did you pick that up on the job to get your questions answered?
I see. It was really, yeah, picking it up on the job as well as taking a lot of courses. I'm completely self-taught in Python and SQL, R as
Amazing.
well. I also took like a lot of stats classes, like part-time weekend stats classes. So yeah, it's a lot of self-taught, but then I had the benefit of immediately trying to apply it at work because I was always working and studying at the same time.
Oh, that totally makes sense. And the first time that you fully recognized like AI as a part of data science, right? There's like data getting deeper into data-driven decision making, but artificial intelligence is more around like the products making decisions based on data, things like that. Do you remember the first time you kind of recognized that field was where you wanted to pivot into?
That's an interesting question. I think honestly, what's always driven me, and I'm answering the thing. I'm trying to answer the question here, though. But what really drives me is around the application of data science and AI, because what I really enjoyed the most of throughout my learning experience has been around what are the opportunities that we can apply this technology towards. And so, really, I would always look at it from a perspective of what can we solve with these models? What can we solve with these tools? And then I just really focused on use cases and then applied it that way, as opposed to hey, these models are really interesting. Let me try to understand them. It was more about, hey, what problems are out there that I can solve, and that this type of technology can solve for those problems.
Oh, it's so key. I think too many people forget we're product managers first, and the AI/ML is second, right? That it's about creating value through solving real user problems and not just applying the latest tech.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I could kind of give you different examples. So, when I said I was in sales, I had a clear problem. It was I would call people off of their application. They would hang up on me. Some people would uh, I would have a great conversation. They're telling me, "Yep, they're going to sign up," and then a week later, they don't sign up. And so I was looking really for a better strategy. Like, how do I don't want to waste my time. And so every
Yeah.
week, my sales manager came to me and said, "Hey, so what do you think? What worked? What didn't work this week?" And we would have the same conversation over and over again. And so at that point, a friend of mine who was a developer told me to start looking at the data to learn how to code. And it was really because I
Mm.
was really focused on trying to solve this problem where I didn't want to waste my time calling people who are not actually interested. Maybe there's patterns in the data for me to say, okay, these are really the types of leads we should be going after. And I let that drive my learning, learning about machine learning, learning about Python, and then I moved on throughout the rest of my career. I felt what my strength was really around um, not only the product itself, but also how we can use it to improve the business. And that's also
Yeah.
the work I did at Getty Images, where I worked on like lead scoring models, like how do we capture all these different signals that we have around our customers from email campaigns, website behavior, what's in their basket when they join when they go on the website, to create a score that would indicate whether we need a sales touch, which is
Mm.
pretty inexpensive channel to go under, or more of a digital touch where we send them onto this email campaign. So it was always really focused on what's the problem, and then I would try to learn all the technology, all the models that I believed would help me solve that problem.
That's such a great way to look at it. I get so many questions from people saying, "Hey, learning about AI as a whole thing is so overwhelming." And especially like a lot of programming classes start with like here's a variable and like all the details about the syntax, or AI courses start with like here's all the models you need to learn, and like focusing it on a problem. It can help deal with the overwhelm, but I'm sure you found it motivating too, right? To keep going.
Absolutely. When I initially tried to start learning about data science and AI, I tried to learn the math. I tried to learn all the foundations of statistics, which I ultimately did, but it was really hard to make it real for me
Yeah.
to really attach it back to, what's the benefit for my problem? What's the benefit for my job? What's the benefit for, whatever company I'm working for? And so when I focused more on the application side, suddenly the learning journey became much more interesting because it made it so much more real. And
Yeah.
then when the models and the technology would work out, it would actually have a tangible benefit that I experienced, because suddenly I don't have to make those awful phone calls. I could show my manager, like, see, these leads are actually not worth our time. Or I could see the success rate that certain models are having on our conversion rates. When I was at Getty Images, and
Yeah.
so that's really it is a motivating factor, but it also provides that focus.
Yeah, amazing. Well, I'd love to talk about a little more about what you're doing now. So I don't know if maybe you can give us some highlights of some of like the coolest AI related projects you've worked on.
Sure. In terms of the coolest ones, so so right now, so in my time at Google, it wasn't AI or ML related. It was again more focused on how we commercialize our products.
Yeah,
So I'll speak more to what I do now in terms of the Walmart.
sure.
And so at Walmart, what I'm working on is really focused on ML and AI use cases. As you can imagine, you see it in the news. Walmart does a lot with data. Walmart has a ton of machine learning AI models out there. And so I work specifically for Luminate, which is the data monetization um, uh, company within Walmart that sells
Oh,
its
cool.
data to its suppliers so that they can
Mm.
improve and grow their business with Walmart. And so where I'm really focused on is on 0 to 1 use cases where we can apply, ML and AI technology onto our platform so that our suppliers can use it. So some of the projects that I'm working on, which again I started 3 months ago, so I haven't launched anything just yet. But some of the projects I'm working on is around being able to predict whether items are available on the shelf to be
Mm,
ordered by customers online, uh,
yeah.
but providing those signals to our suppliers so that way they can understand, where they need to restock on inventory, or where they should deliver more inventory to which stores, or which distribution centers. So it's looking at that. It's also looking at all the models that already exist within Walmart and trying to see if we can adapt them to additional use cases. It's a really interesting space, I would say,
Yeah.
because I see all the LinkedIn posts that talk a lot about a solution looking for a problem, and
Mm,
that's one of the risks here, where you have a ton of models that you're just putting it out there and hoping somebody would use it. And so the idea here is I'm taking a bottom up and top down approach. Bottom up being we have all these models that currently solve a problem. They're within a problem
yeah.
space. And so the idea is, can I identify a supplier use case for these models and adapt them in such a way that it provides value to our suppliers? And then the top down approach is looking at, broadly speaking, how do we understand our user problems, our user pain points, and then what sort of gaps can we identify and generate opportunities. And so some of the things I can speak towards are things where there are gaps in terms of visibility, uh,
Mm.
prioritization, and then what I'll call like actionability or recommendations. So in
What do you mean by visibility?
Sure. So visibility. I'm gonna butcher this word, but if you look at sometimes in when you're trying to clean up a data set for a model, you have missing values, and so you would want to extrapolate. No, it's not extrapolate.
Interpolate, is that it?
Interpolate. Yeah, I think that's the word. Interpolate. But basically, you have these gaps in your data, and so what you could do is build a model to predict what that value would have been if you had that
Mm,
data, if you
right.
either had the infrastructure in place to capture that data. And so that's one way that I'm using predictive models to identify these gaps in the supply chain journey, and then apply machine learning to provide visibility onto that missing gap. Uh,
Oh, very cool.
yeah, and then
Awesome.
the other one,
Yeah. What was the second one? The visibility was the first one. What was the next
the
one?
next one was around prioritization, and so
Yeah.
prioritization is understanding that we all have constraints. There's only so much time we have, and there are tons and tons of items and jobs, or tons of items or tasks that we need to accomplish. And so you can use predictive modeling almost as a scoring algorithm to prioritize where you should focus. And so, as you can imagine, Walmart has tons of inventory, and you have employees, suppliers, trying to manage all this inventory, and with the constraint of you only have so many hours in a day. And so applying predictive modeling, you can um, sort or provide guidance in terms of where these associates should focus, like which inventory is the most critical for that store, or
Ah,
which items are most important in a supplier's portfolio. And so that way it at least provides guidance to say, if you can improve how the inventory is performing within the store, then you're having the biggest impact ultimately on the sales of that store.
so and it's almost like you're predicting like, hey, let's optimize for revenue,
Yeah,
or basically optimize for the inventory we have. Is that the
yeah.
idea?
So optimizing for the inventory we have, it's also looking at it in terms of trying to prevent a loss of sales. And so
Mm,
you could think of it as, where can like what items should I focus? Which items are driving most of my sales, and then
yeah.
which ones should which of those items are at the biggest risk of not fulfilling a sale, whether it's inventory issues or what have you. Is providing that prediction to say, okay, these are your biggest drivers, but within those biggest items, these are the ones that provide the biggest risk for a loss of a sale.
Gotcha. Oh, that makes total sense. And then there was visibility, prioritization. What was the
Oh, and
third
then the
one?
last one is recommendations. This one I'm
Right.
still we're working on the naming of it, but the purpose of that last one is really to provide recommendations in terms of what action to take. Uh, a
Mm,
lot of the users that I speak to for the Illuminate platform, they're ultimately trying to take an action or trying to understand what is the right action to take to improve their
yeah.
business. And in the natural progression of any sort of analytics, you pull the data, you're cleaning it up, you're analyzing it, then you're trying to diagnose like what is the root problem, and then trying to figure out what actions are possible, and then pick one of those actions. And so the purpose of this action recommendation is to speed up that process as fast as you can, so that ultimately what we're providing is the action that they should take to ultimately improve their sales for their business. That one I think is really exciting because I think it has
Yeah.
multiple benefits. So something that comes up a lot in I think in anything related to data is sort of data. It's the sensitivity of the data. Like what data can you actually show users? Because some of it is very
Right.
proprietary, and so there's always conversations with your data governance to say, you can't use this data or you can't show this data to certain users. And so one of the benefits of predictive modeling is you just need to provide the output of the model. You don't necessarily need to provide the raw data itself. And so it's almost
Yeah.
like your ML model is like that layer of protecting, um, you know, safeguarding that sensitive data from your end user. So ultimately,
Mm,
in this example with recommendations, we just need to really recommend the actions, what's the possible impact on your sales of those actions, and then everything else that might be sensitive data, they're just inputs
yeah.
that we don't actually have to display to the user. And that way, if we solve the problem well for our users, then we don't necessarily need to give them that sensitive data that otherwise we ultimately can't give it to them.
And can you still provide the transparency they might want for understanding, like, hey, how were these decisions made?
Yeah,
Like, does that?
yeah, absolutely. I think of that one in terms of explainability. So just
Mm,
how we ended up reaching this prediction, and ultimately that is a piece of the puzzle. So it's not just here's a prediction, you go figure out what you want to do with the prediction. It's more here's the prediction, and here's the context under which we're making this recommendation, and then so long as and so long as we give the appropriate context, then we're
yeah.
providing that explainability to how we resulted in this recommendation, and how, generally speaking, how we arrived at ultimately at this prediction from the model.
I love that. It's just giving that extra step of value, right? You're like, let us do this one more step for you
Mhm.
that you actually, want help in the decision making, not just a bunch of like a dashboard or
Yeah,
something, right?
absolutely. And thinking about it also in terms of the business, you have your kind of like your operating costs where, um, at least in this line of work, everybody's going to want more data. Everybody wants to
Yeah.
be more real time, but that just gets incrementally more expensive. And so,
Hmm.
so at some point, you really do need to understand like what is the user problem you're trying to solve for, because you're going to reach a ceiling around the amount of data you can actually give to users through a web browser or through an API. And so thinking, being laser focused on, what is the job to be done that the user is trying to solve for, then you have some runway before you hit that ceiling of overwhelming amount of data that you're trying to push through to the end user.
That's a really great point. I think again, a lot of tech-led initiatives are just like, well, can we do it faster? Can we give them more
Yeah,
data? Maybe they don't need more than one recommendation a day,
yeah,
right? Like it's the user might only be able to absorb so
yeah.
much, right?
And it's also a missed opportunity as well,
Mm,
because if you're only looking at the present state of we're a data company and we're giving data, then it's a missed opportunity to understand, what are the problems we're trying to solve for our end customers, where we can
Yeah.
probably generate even better products, leverage things that only we can do internally, because we have inside access to all that data, and so it adds
Yeah.
to additional revenue streams that we can tap into.
Oh, totally. That's so interesting. I think backing up and talking about your role specifically, I think a lot of folks, um, a lot of product people come in thinking, I really want an idealized job where we start with the customer. We always start with the customer use case. Your role is so interesting because you're like, I want to start with customers and the problems,
Yeah.
but we have this huge arsenal and a huge strategic advantage in the kind of data that only we have. I think of it almost like the pharmaceutical industries do this, where they're like, here's a drug and it's a blockbuster for, heart, but hey, like, are there other cross purposes this same drug actually works?
Yeah.
Where you're like, why would we not use that if we just have to slightly change the marketing, like, and still reuse what we have? Can you talk a little bit about that tension between, like, I want to be customer driven, but I do have this like crazy toolkit of stuff I'm trying to figure out how to use, and that's kind of my job too, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's a great way to put it. The way I think a lot about, or one of the core skill sets of a product manager, is being able to tell a story, being able to tell, I would say, a meaningful story. And
Yeah.
like you said, there is this tension. And so I think what helps a product manager navigate this point of tension, it really comes down to communication and what's the story you're telling, what's the strategy that you're working on. Understandably, that you're in an ambiguous space, you don't know what ideas are going to work and which ones aren't, but that's
Yeah.
where your storytelling capabilities is even more important. I might be biased because I came from sales, but at least my experience telling the
Leverage
story,
your strengths, man. That's awesome.
I think telling the story um, builds that trust, because
Yeah.
you definitely have this tension where we have these models that are already built. So let's just launch something as fast as possible and see what sticks. But at the same time, you want to understand that you're building something that's meaningful for the user, and so this is why I started with the top down, bottom up approach, because
Mm,
ultimately. I'm trying to do both things almost simultaneously, so that
right.
the thought is they'll meet somewhere in the middle, where suddenly, because we did this user research, this existing model that already exists can possibly fit within what we just learned about our users. And at the same time, because we did this user research to understand our users deeply, we've identified new blank space where we can actually build a model from the ground up. And
Yeah.
so,
Something new.
yeah, it's something new, exactly. And so I think it's that balance between what's brand new versus what's already existing, but the story
Yes.
is how you weave it together in terms of what are the problems that our users are facing within our product, and how do they connect with one another. And so that's actually something that I've struggled with a lot in the past, but what's helped me connect the dots across these what might seem disparate initiatives had helped me unify it together, so that way it's not just a laundry list of things that we want to launch, but it's
Yeah.
incrementally adding value throughout the journey, in this case the journey of a supplier.
Gotcha. Exactly. That's storyline through the whole thing. That's great advice. Obviously, you've now had deep experience with all sorts of like predictive models. These what we think of as like traditional ML before Chat GPT, where you're doing like point predictions, you're doing trend predictions, you're doing recommendation systems. Is generative AI involved in any of these yet, or is it still a case where these models are small, special purpose? They do the job better than Gen AI.
So there is. I'm not there. There are. I'm aware of one or two. I'm not leading the different product managers leading those initiatives,
Hmm.
um, and so I'm probably not the best person to speak to on that regard. But I mean, yeah, currently there isn't any Gen AI that I'm currently working on. That isn't to say there is an idea out there. Interesting enough, I think it was in your Slack channel. Someone had posted
Oh,
about Gen AI time series forecast. And so
Oh
I
yeah,
actually thought that was a really interesting. It was either I think it was an article from Google.
about time GPT and the time series
The
LLMs,
time
right?
series
Yeah,
LLM. And so if you think about supply chain, that's completely a time series from you know my manufacturing, getting someone to deliver my products from the manufacturer to distribution center, and then getting those products from distribution center into the stores, and then getting them on the shelves, and then getting them to people's houses from delivery or them
right.
coming into the store. All that is I see it as a time series, and so I don't have a project yet on that, but I did see that in the community Slack channel. So there's an idea there. Again, going back to the visibility theme that I had, where I think maybe
Yeah,
that time series GPT might be helpful.
might be helpful. Yeah, I do think for a lot of like retail use cases that are done well with predictive models. A lot of places are like, we could do it with generative AI, and then they work out that it's expensive, and then they're like, well, how do we do this case cheaply? And they go back to traditional models, maybe smaller language models, but often smaller special purpose models that are built for the use case, right? Just because if you want to do it at like Walmart scale,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it makes sense to start where you are. Well, that's awesome. Obviously, you had a steep learning curve in AI to make this remarkable transition to the point where you're leading these exciting initiatives. How did you make that transition?
Yeah. How did I make that transition? I think I think part of it has I think I always straddled um, three things. One is just that the data aspect, my data strength, not just my ability to analyze data, but it's my I think investing on what can I do with this data? What are the applications
Mm,
that are possible with this data? So not just reporting or dashboards, but honestly, what new revenue streams can we have access to with the data that we have, or identify new product opportunities based off of the data that we have. And then the second one I would say is around kind of like the product management, just being able to manage ambiguity, understanding customers, and coming up with these bets and managing all those
mm,
bets and make sure they're making progress. And then the last part is around the what I'll call the business side of things. Just what is our strategic differentiation within the market? What are
yeah.
certain products that I think we can actually sell to our customers? I think that's kind of helped me fit within this world where there are companies that essentially have a lot of data and they're trying to sell it or they're trying to build products that rely heavily on data. And so that really helped me take on roles where they might have been heavy on one of these three. So there were
Mm,
roles where it was more heavy on the data side, kind of going back to my time at Amazon, where it was very much how do we identify cost saving opportunities. And so that was
okay.
more data heavy, even though there was an angle around the cost savings and how do we identify these cost saving opportunities for financial analysts. Then there was more of the traditional product manager experience, which I think was during my time at SVB and at Google, where I was really trying to identify how do we automate a lot of these manual processes, and that comes with understanding your data and understanding
Hmm.
what data is important to the user and when is the right time to present that information or collect that information, so that way you're
Yeah.
not providing a frustrating experience for the user because let's take a one example was like during our onboarding or sign up process. If I repeatedly ask you or how large is your company or what series your company is on, uh, that's actually pretty frustrating. As a founder, it's like I already told you. Why are you asking
Yeah.
me again? And that takes a deep understanding of where are we collecting this data and where are we presenting this data. And then lastly, like I was saying, the business side, and I think
Yeah.
that's also what makes me excited about the Walmart opportunity because Data Ventures is a startup within Walmart, and so they're very
Very cool.
receptive for identifying revenue generating opportunities. And so there are some other projects that I'm working on where I think we can sell certain capabilities, especially if we think of the outputs of ML as a separate revenue stream, especially because we have all this proprietary data that we can't give to suppliers, then it becomes this competitive advantage where, if I gave you the output of these models, then that could be something that customers are willing to buy as an API or something along those.
No, totally. Exactly. So it sounds like the path has been really focusing on follow the data, right?
Yeah.
It's like AI is run by data. That's sort of the oil of it running. So if you can focus on understanding how to work with data.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you had to summarize in one sentence your advice to people who want to get into AI, they don't necessarily have a background in data, but in the product space, and they want to get into AI, where should they start?
Sure. I would say make it as real as possible, or as soon as possible.
Yeah.
So we all have challenges and problems, whether it's at work or at home, or hobbies. Try to take one of those problems and you try to use AI to solve for it. Because what that helps you, in my experience, give is one, that motivation. Because if it works out, you just made your life so much easier. Get that ego boost because, wow, I solved a problem where I seriously felt the frustration of that problem. And then three, that focus where there's so much content out there. There's so many things I could possibly be learning. And then there's a big FOMO of like, am I looking at the right thing? Is it me? Is it the content? And so if you really focus on the problems you experience, then that's giving you the curriculum over how you should go about your AI learning journey.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic advice. I love that. Awesome. Well, we have one last section left. It's time for plugs. So, is there anything you wanted to plug coming up in your life, Hans? I know you it's totally cool. There's not.
Yeah, there isn't. Honestly, I wish there was. Can I put a placeholder like I'll write a book now. There.
His upcoming novel. We're gonna name it right now.
So at some point in the future, and we'll edit
That's
it.
right. Watch the placeholder here. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Well, from my end, I just love to plug our newsletter. So follow me on LinkedIn if you like tips and tricks for product managers who want to get into AI or who are already in AI but want more experience in the space. Our newsletter, aicareerboost.com/interested, where you'll learn about upcoming courses that are coming. Hans is a graduate from one of our courses from the Blueprint program, a proud alumni. That was the Slack channel he was mentioning, who's part of our Slack community as well. And I just want to thank you so much for being part of the podcast today. We really enjoyed speaking with you. Now that it's a chance to really delve into your journey and how you're using AI today. So thanks so much again, Hans, for being here.
Great. Thank you so much, Polly. It's been a pleasure.
Fantastic. So that's our episode of AI Product Leader for us today. If you do want to join in the conversation, then be sure to send us questions for future episodes at support@aicareerboost.com. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week.